in the background here a little bit. Well, let me just start off by saying good afternoon. We've got some company with us today from the Montgomery Advertiser, taking some pictures of behind the scenes of our virtual town hall that we do every Friday with a Facebook Live. We do it also sometimes, not quite as much, on our Instagram as well. And so just trying to really make sure we bring as much information to you as possible. But I think what our friends from the Advertiser are finding out is that there's not a whole lot to this operation, except for a couple of folks getting me mic'd up and making sure that I know a little bit what's been happening around the city and can give some of my thoughts and feedback on that. So we want to thank them again for just covering this and really making sure that everyone in the community stays informed during this COVID-19 pandemic. I want to start by hitting a couple of quick points, and then I'll get to our guest for today, Wade Preston, the owner of Prevail Union Coffee. And I want to make sure that we give him a chance to share some of his thoughts. He's been working on our Economic Impact Committee, as well as been very active in helping our frontline workers. But first thing is I want to kind of review the week. We announced a partnership with Montgomery Public Schools revolving around allowing the public schools to utilize our TV facilities to broadcast educational information, whether that be classroom lectures and lesson plans, or whether that be anything else that they want to utilize it for. We think this is another step toward helping out on the distance learning side. And we're really trying to do everything that we can as we feel our way through this to assist our public schools and assist the teachers and the parents and the students during what's been an unprecedented academic year. That being said, we're also partnering with AKEEP, and they are working with us as well to utilize our TV studios and all of our equipment to broadcast information to the Korean community. Ms. Suhan has been a very big supporter in that, has been leading that effort for some time. So we're grateful to be able to work with them in the Korean community to bring educational access to them as well. All this will be located not only online, but also we can have it located, or it is going to be located on our cable station as well. So we want to make sure we kind of touch on some of those issues as well. And we also have a few things that we're going to talk about that took place today. And that is the mask giveaway is something that we utilized today. And we utilized the opportunity to really distribute masks to every person that needed them at Carver High School, at Montgomery Zoo, and at the Emory Farmer YMCA Soccer Complex. So we want to thank our Community Impact Committee. We also want to make sure we thank those members of the committee that brought out some of their volunteers, Jimmy Hill, the chairman of the United Way, along with Pastor Ed Nettles, pastor at Free Will Missionary Baptist Church, and City Councilman Audrey Graham. And we also had Kanisha Brown and Jeremy and a few others that were out there just really assisting us today and making sure we got those things passed out. Even Avery Brown who's an intern here with the city council, who's an intern here with the city, working with the city council, was assisting along with my special assistant, Tania John. So we had a good group of people out there. And I must tell you, I was surprised by the demand of people that came out and were looking for masks. We had several thousand masks that we gave away, and it still was not enough. So we apologize to those who weren't able to get a mask, but we want to make sure that we're going to do this again because we realize there is a need, and we realize that more people are looking for ways to try to stay safe during this very, just unpredictable time that we're in. So again, much success to our Community Impact Committee. We want to thank them, and thanks to all the volunteers for coming out as well. Now I want to make sure that we move right along and we talk about the fact that we're still under a state of emergency here in the city of Montgomery. The economy has opened back up in part across the state of Alabama, but in Montgomery, we're still taking baby steps to get there. Our case numbers are still rising, and Thursday was the highest date of new cases since March 15th. We had just about 50 cases on yesterday as well, new cases on yesterday. And so we're right around 340, 350 mark, somewhere in there in terms of cases here in Montgomery County. And that's not even beginning to give us a real sense of things because our testing is still insufficient at this time. So it's important that everyone understand that although the beaches may be open, other retail outlets may be open, we are still under a state of emergency. And we still have a curfew that is intact. And that curfew is going to be intact until we start seeing some of the data and some of the numbers that we believe are accurate enough to allow us to lift it. So when that is, we haven't determined that, but we want to let everyone know that we are being guided by the data and we are being guided by the experts. I certainly understand the feelings of small businessmen and women all across the city and the state who want to get back to work. Many people in the hospitality industry and the leisure industry, our barbers, our stylists, our gyms, all of us are waiting to kind of get back to that point. But we can't do that until the data says that we are starting to see a decline in terms of new cases as well as hospital admissions. So we want to make sure that we have all of that information working together before we really open up the economy in full. And I think the more we can stay at home, the more we can maintain our hygiene efforts that we've been taking by washing our hands constantly, and the more we can make sure that we're staying focused, that social distancing is still necessary, then I think that we'll start to see some opportunities come sooner rather than later. So I just want to reiterate that, again, although states around us and part of Alabama has opened back up, we're not there yet in the city of Montgomery. We want our retail establishments to make sure they're operating with the mandates that have been set forth by Governor Kay Ivey. And we want to make sure that everyone understands we're still under a state of emergency because we're putting the health of this community over and above everything. We're choosing the lives over and above everything. And when we think about the disproportionate impact this COVID-19 pandemic is having on the Black community, I think it's even more important that we be cautious and we be careful and we be prudent in our approach to this. Often, disproportionate numbers in the Black community have pre-existing health conditions, which make them not only more susceptible to the virus itself, but also makes it a lot harder to recover. And the access to healthcare in this community, in this state, is still a high barrier for most people to even get assistance should they come down with it. So while I love to hear the cash registers ringing and the Zelle buttons clicking and everything else, so we could get sales tax revenue to help our city coffers, that's not enough in order for us to be at a point where we believe we should take that type of approach to open back up the economy when we know there's still so many challenges out there regarding testing, regarding contact tracing and follow-up, and making sure that we not only slow the spread, but we try to stop the spread of the COVID-19 virus. So I hope that gives you a little background that I'm utilizing for our decision-making and our judgment and the steps that we're taking here in the city. And I look forward to some of the questions that you may have as we go along. With that said, I want to invite Wade Preston to come up and talk to us a little bit about what he's been doing from his business, and also to really give us a sense of what ideas have been talked about on the Economic Impact Committee and any other thoughts that he may have about how we move forward together. Wade, you go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mayor. Can you hear me okay? I was having some audio issues hearing you. Can you hear me? I'm assuming that you got me. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, it's been a lot of great work happening on the Economic Impact Task Force. We really have three main objectives that we've been working through. And the first is really trying to work with our congressional delegation in Washington, D.C. Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic is a massive problem that goes far beyond the scope of a local government. And we want to make sure that we have a clear line of communication with Senator Jones, Senator Shelby, Representative Roby, Representative Sewell, all of whom have been very great in this process. And we've had good communication with them and really trying to communicate the needs of small businesses here in Montgomery and how legislation that's happening in DC can positively and negatively affect what happens here in the river region. Second, we've been working with the Montgomery Chamber of Commerce, and Ann Buckaloo has done an amazing job with this, leading up this effort of creating a hub for small businesses to access assistance and get help in applying for federal programs. And we've also been making a concerted effort to spread the word to businesses that may not have heard about all the aid that's available to them through the federal government. And also just trying to get ready for the future. You know, things will open up again, and we obviously are starting that process little by little, and we're stepping into it cautiously. But there will come a time when things do start getting back to normal, and we don't want to be caught flat-footed with that. We want to be ready for the economy to fully reopen, and we want to do all we can to get our tourism back. We know that a lot of people are going to be traveling as soon as this is over, and we think that a lot of people are going to be traveling on the interstate that maybe have canceled plans to travel internationally, or they don't want to go to Disney World anymore, and they're going to be coming right down I-65 heading to the beach. And we want to welcome those visitors in and show them all the amazing things that Montgomery has to offer. So we don't want to get caught not ready for the future. So I've got a little bit of a delay, so I'm going to let you, I'll give a little moment of silence till I catch up with your audio.
Wade, I want to thank you for your leadership and thanks for your feedback as well. I mean, obviously, what you all been doing downtown has been tremendous, and you all have, you know, kind of established yourself almost as a, you know, an iconic brand and place here in a very short amount of time. You know, usually that takes decades, if not longer, for, you know, businesses like yourself to do. But I think that you all have done a fantastic job in creating the identity, maintaining a fantastic culture, and really attracting people from locals to tourists that come in and really want to stop by your shop for more than just the coffee. They want to stop by for the service and just for the camaraderie that you have. So thanks again for all that you're doing, and thanks for serving our Economic Impact Committee. I think now we can go to take some questions. So I'm looking forward to hearing what may be out there. John Paul Snowden Jr. asked, can you still visit family members at cemeteries? Yes, sir, you may. You can visit families at cemeteries. And just, you know, again, we want to make sure that people are wearing masks anytime they're in public, as often as they can. We want to highly encourage that. We have not mandated it because not everyone can get access to a mask, but we do want to encourage you to do that. But by all means, if there's a gravesite that you would like to go visit, particularly with Mother's Day coming up and other birthdays and things along those lines. We ask you may do that. We just ask that you practice social distancing while doing that as well. Yes, are we still on a curfew? That answer is yes, we are still on a curfew right now. Again, we want to make sure that we don't let our guard down with our numbers increasing day by day still, even with the lack of testing. I believe the curfew is the best way to make sure that we don't have large groups gathering in places where they otherwise would, that they could be unknowingly even spreading the COVID-19 virus. And so I understand with graduations coming up, that may impact some plans, but unfortunately, this is a unique circumstance that's going to keep us under curfew, I think, for some days ahead. Do we have any other questions that are coming in? Are there creative ways for grads to celebrate? I think everybody's either maybe zoomed out or maybe TikToked out at this point. But, you know, I think that we have to look for things like that. It may have to be somewhat of a delayed celebration, as my daughter is going to have to deal with a little bit and graduating from college. So this is just, you know, a unique time. But I think when we consider that 60,000 people have lost their lives from this disease in a relatively short amount of time, it's important that we keep things in perspective. And I think that it is a fantastic, you know, event to celebrate a graduation and what that means, the hard work and the effort. And it's often that one that goes beyond just the graduate themselves. And so I understand that, but this is a year where I think that's going to have to be either done in a way that maximizes our technological advances, or is one that's delayed until people can kind of get back to doing some things in person in a relatively safe way. What is the mandate for local churches? That's a good question. Churches are still not to meet at this time per Governor Ivey's shelter-in-place order. That is an area that there has not been any lifting of the restrictions that are been placed on churches and other even sporting events and things along those lines. So we still want you to get the message from your church, but it probably either has to be either online, or it's going to need to be outside or in a drive-in situation. So I think there are some churches that are doing drive-in church worship services just so people can see one another. I certainly understand that. But again, we want to make sure that we aren't putting the health practices over anything else at this time in order to get that done. Is the city of Montgomery still facing a shortage of tests? Other similar counties seem to have completed more testing. That's a very good question. I think the entire state and the entire country, for that matter, is still short of tests. So I can answer that in the affirmative and say yes. That said, we have received more tests, and we should be rolling out our partnership of the tests that we received from Hyundai Corporation a couple of weeks ago, sometime next week. And I think we're just about there with the lab techs and getting everything worked out. And that has taken some time because the priorities have changed, and some of the labs that we had agreements with had to abide by federal rules that they test some of the meat packing plants that you may have heard about that have experienced a COVID-19 outbreak. So we've had to recalibrate, and the staff have done a great job in doing just that. But we have more tests. I would like to be able to test every single person in the city of Montgomery. I think that would be the ideal situation, but we aren't there yet. But we will roll out the tests that we have so far sometime next week. I noticed that restaurants aren't wearing masks while preparing food. Should this be a requirement? You know, that's something that's being talked about quite a bit is what's going to happen. What's going to happen with our food industry. And that's probably more of a health department question. I think that people should be wearing masks anytime they're in public and anytime they're not around their family. I think that should be what we're doing. But again, it's hard for government to tell at this point a private business what they have to do. You know, I think one thing to consider, whether they're not wearing masks or they're not wearing gloves, is whether or not that's the place you want to get your food from. And I think business owners are probably going to respond more to their customers than they are to what type of ordinance we can pass down. But I think the health department is looking into that, and I would expect to see something clearly stated sometime in the near future. Do we still report parties or gatherings of over 10 people? Yes. You know, we still need to report that because we want to make sure people are practicing social distancing. And this is just to, again, try to educate people who may not watch the news. They may not tune in to Facebook Live. They may not be aware of the information that you're getting via social media or however you get your information. So I think it is still relevant for us to make sure that people are not getting past the restrictions because the weather is great or because they're hearing about other cities or other states changing their policies. We have not changed ours, and we will not change them again until the health experts and the data tells us that it's best to do so. What is the best point of contact? Who is the best point of contact with the city to address issues concerning homelessness? You know, there are a couple of things. One, you can dial 211 and let us know, and we can connect you to some of the organizations that are helping us with Hands on River Region and some of the other homeless coalitions, organizations that we're working with. We have a coalition of groups that are really helping us with that information and really helping us through that process. So feel free to give us a call here at 211 and we'll make sure we get whatever information you may have, or we can answer any questions that you may have as well. Is the Walmart location on Atlanta Highway still doing testing? At last check, they were. Now, unless something has changed in the last 24 to 48 hours, they are doing testing, but it is by appointment. And one thing that is good for us kind of to bring up right now is the fact that Walmart did not have a lot of people requesting tests. And I understand that. You know, people feel pretty good right now. They don't really feel like they are suffering from any symptoms, but we want people to get tested as often as possible because we know that, you know, people can be asymptomatic where this is concerned. So you do have to make an appointment, but as far as I know, Walmart is still doing the testing, and we'll check and make sure and verify that so that we aren't caught off guard by any change they may have had in the last number of hours. What about kids baseball? Yeah, you know, when you think about baseball, travel baseball, soccer, youth camps, I mean, it is really tough right now. You know, I don't see that happening in the next couple of weeks. I think where we go with youth sports and all that, again, is going to be determined by, are we seeing a reduction in the number of positive COVID-19 cases? And no one, you know, likes to hear the clink of a bat, probably more than I do. We're missing Biscuits baseball downtown, and we're missing it all across the city, along with many other sports and outdoor activities that people engage with in their family and friends as a way to come together, as a way to relieve stress, or as a way just to have some fun. And unfortunately, right now, that's not something that I see happening over the next few weeks. But I think that when we can see some progress being made, then we'll open back up the parks and we'll see what the respective leagues, sports leagues, do at that time. What percentage of Montgomeryans have completed the census? I don't know the answer to that question. We'll have to find that out and see if our census director, Candy Capel, has the answer to that. I'm not sure, but let me just say this. Until we get to 100%, there's always work that can be done because we need everyone to be counted for the census because so many things depend on the number of people that we have counted and the number of people that we have living here. That's dollars for infrastructure. That's federal dollars for education. That's everything from things that have to do with feeding programs to healthcare to technology. There's so much. I mean, I could do a whole section just on that, and maybe we will. But it's one of those things that until we get 100% of people who are sharing that they have filled out the census, then we've got work to do. It's almost like voting. Everyone talks in the abstract about voting, but we know a lot of people still don't vote. And we want to make sure that people aren't just talking in the abstract of the census, but that they're actually filling it out, because it may impact, how many, programs we're able to run through many of our nonprofit organizations, the level of funding that we're able to get for educational and social services programs, as well as even things that impact our economy. So it's very important that we, really get everybody counted, and we make this a personal campaign to get folks to do this 6-minute survey. It's all it takes if you do it online, or it takes even less if you give them a phone call at my2020census.gov. The information is there. We want everybody to fill that out.
Hey, Mayor, I saw a question about food preparation and gloves that I just want to jump in on, since we operate a food service business. And
so wait, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second, because I can't hear your question. But now feel free to make a statement, and I'll just wait for you to pause. But I can't hear your question, unfortunately, on my end.
Well, I was going to say, I saw in the comments, someone was asking a question about food preparation and specifically gloves. And I just wanted to jump in, since we run a food service business. It's been really challenging trying to keep up with all the latest that we can find on it. And I have a strange connection to the CDC. My cousin actually is a microbiologist that works for the CDC, and we've been in contact with him a lot for guidance. And on gloves, what we've heard and believed to be true is that hand washing destroys the virus, while the virus can live on gloves for a long period of time, just like it can live on any other surface. So washing your hands frequently and consistently is destroying the virus, while just having gloves on, you essentially need to be taking gloves off every time you touch something else or handle money or grab a doorknob or anything like that. So I know a lot of food service businesses, ours included, are opting with a very intense hand washing policy rather than wearing gloves. So if you see someone doing food prep without gloves on, know that it could be just that the policy there is intense hand washing rather than the gloves.
Wade, thanks for that. Thanks for that clarification. I mean, that's extremely helpful. Your knowledge of that, I think, is going to be beneficial for us to pass on. And I know it's been beneficial to me just in hearing that. So I appreciate your perspective on that as well. I know that we're getting close to a time where we need to wrap up. And so I just want to conclude by thanking everyone for joining us on our virtual town hall. This is something that we started out just to try to make sure we're talking to as many people as we can about issues that we're dealing with here at the city regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, but also things that are going on in the city that you may not know about. So I look forward to having this discussion more often. Please feel free to share it. We're always looking for ideas that we can talk about. So if you and your circle are discussing some things or have some questions that you think we ought to bring up, don't hesitate to let us know. And we'll make sure we try to incorporate that either in our virtual town hall or somewhere in our social media along the way. The key right now for us is to continue to work together. It's to continue to be resilient and to know that although we're still in a challenging time, there remains an opportunity for us to really come out of this better. And that may be hard for us to see right now, but I believe it's something that we can do if we continue to chip away at this. And it's been an unprecedented amount of cooperation throughout this community. I'm proud to say, and I've been proud to share with national media outlets, that this community has been fantastic in its approach to this, has taken it seriously from day one. And I believe that has a lot to do with our progress. That said, we're still not out of the woods just yet. And we want to make sure we remain focused on getting there. And that means for us to continue practicing social distancing, as well as to continue washing our hands, making sure that we're doing those necessary practices that are going to keep all of us in the best space that we can be. Look out for your friends, look out for your family, look out for those vulnerable citizens in our population, the elderly and many others. Check on some of your neighbors as well and some of your church members and friends. We also want to make sure that we continue to lift up those frontline workers, our first responders, our medical employees and people who are in that area, in that field, at all levels, not just the doctors and nurses, the practitioners, the janitors, so many people who are in the medical space that are really helping, but also those grocery store workers and those retail workers. We want to thank them and just try to do something, a small gesture of reward or recognition can go a long way sometimes. So let's keep that in mind. And we're going to keep pushing from this end to not only try to be innovative in our approach, but to be effective in making sure we keep the health of this community at the forefront, and that we do everything in our power in the mayor's office to address this issue the very best way we can. We may not always be 100% successful, but we're always going to try 100% to get there. And so as long as you know that and take that away from today, then we'll be in a better place. We are, again, still under a state of emergency. The curfew is still in effect. Please try to stay home while supporting our retail businesses that have opened. We hope that over the next few weeks, we'll be opening more without putting the community at any additional health risk. But let's make sure, number one, that we take care of ourselves and our health, and we try to stay safe as often as we can. Thanks so much for your cooperation, and thanks for everything you're doing, not only here in Montgomery, but throughout the river region in central Alabama. And we'll get through it, and we'll continue to work together on it. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.